Bonjour French 2 students. Here is your teaching video for lesson 23, parts B and C, pages 333 to 337 in your textbook. S'il vous plaît, ouvrez vos livres à la page 333. So before we kind of get started, we're going to kind of review what we've learned about the passé composé. Remember, the passé composé is kind of requires two words to form. And so the format of the passé composé, and again, remember, we've also learned it with questions, so I'm going to even kind of put that question part in there, right? So we could have our question word, we could have est que, and remember, if it's not a question, then this stuff just won't be there. Then we're going to have our subject, our conjugated form of avoir, our past participle, and then our dot, dot, dot for whatever else is in that sentence. So again, these two words that are required for the passé composé are our conjugated avoir and our past participle. Okay? Again, our conjugated form of avoir, okay, just again to kind of review and make sure you remember your forms of the conjugated form avoir, right? The forms of avoir are, when we'll kind of even put them over here, j'ai, tu as, il, elle, on a, nous avons, vous avez, and il and elle, pluriel, ont. Now, also remember, okay, that we can have, we can make any of this negative, and remember, if we're making this negative, our ne and our pas go around our conjugated form of the verb avoir. Now, for the past participle, so far, you have learned how to form the past participle, okay, for a regular ER verb, right? And for a regular ER verb, you start with your infinitive. You take off the ER, and then you're going to add that accented E. Remember, what was nice about regular ER verbs is that the infinitive and the past participle sound the same. So that accented E you add sounds the same as an ER. Okay? Today, we're continuing to learn about the passé composé. So remember, there were three categories of regular verbs. So we're going to talk about another one of those categories. Okay? So another one of our past participles could be when we have a regular IR verb. For a regular IR verb, we're still going to start with our infinitive. We're going to remove the IR, and then we're going to add an I. And remember, we had one other category of regular verb, and that was our regular RE verbs. In a regular RE verb, we're still going to start with our infinitive. We're going to take off our RE, and then we're going to add a U. So, to kind of give you an example of something, of a passé composé, of a regular RE verb, if we look at the verb perdre, which means to lose, it would be j'ai perdu, if I want to say I lost. To look at an example of this with a regular IR verb, like, for example, choisir, to choose, to a choisi. And kind of lastly, to go back and have an example again of a regular ER verb, like nager, okay, on a nager, okay. So again, all of these passé composés, okay, required those two words, right? A nager, a choisi, a perdu. Okay? Now, those are our three categories of regular verbs for forming the passé composé. Remember that along the way, you've also learned some irregular verbs. Oops. Now, again, the format is still the same, and I'm just going to leave out the question part of that, okay? So our format, I'll just kind of put a ... for in case it's a question. It's still going to be our subject, our conjugated form of avoir, our past participle, and then our ... for whatever else is in that sentence. Again, our conjugated forms of avoir, those aren't changing, okay? So our subject is J apostrophe, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle. Okay, so those are our subjects. Our conjugated forms of avoir still are a, avon, ave, and ont. Okay, so these still require two words. Okay, so we still have to use two words. The issue is, typically, if we have an irregular verb, our past participle is also going to be irregular. So, there are some irregular verbs, okay, that you've learned along the way. So, typically, if it's an irregular verb, it means we're going to have an irregular past participle. Okay, so there are about 5 irregular verbs you've learned along the way. Être, avoir, faire, mettre, and then the one that you just learned in this lesson, voir. So, kind of going over these and reminding you what they mean. Être means to be. And the past participle for être, so it doesn't matter any one of these, right? Okay, the past participle is always going to be été. Avoir means to have. It's also sometimes used for owning things. And the past participle for avoir is eu. Faire means to do, to make. And the past participle of faire is fait. Mettre means, to put. It can also mean to turn on. And the past participle for mettre is me. And lastly, voir we just learned, to see. And voir, the past participle is vous. So if I want to say that I saw the movie, it'd be j'ai vu le film. If I want to say that he set the table, it'd be il a mis la table. If I want to say that they did their homework, ils ont fait leur devoir. If I want to say that I had a steak, let's not make it I, let's make it we had a steak, some steak. Nous avons eu des steaks. And if I want to say that you were nice, vous avez été sympathique. Okay, so again, we see that this passé composé requires two words. Again, if it's an irregular verb, typically that means it's going to have an irregular past participle. So again, I would certainly recommend that you have some notes about this. It will certainly make taking a test or quiz much easier. So let's take a look at this the way it's presented to you in your textbook. À la page 333, le passé composé des verbes réguliers en IR et RE. Note the passé composé of the verbs below, paying special attention to the ending of the past participle. Choisir. J'ai choisi cette casquette. Je n'ai pas choisi cette chemise. Finir. Nous avons fini le magazine. Nous n'avons pas fini le livre. Vendre. Tu as vendu ton vélo. Tu n'as pas vendu ta moto. Attendre. Jacques a attendu Paul. Il n'a pas attendu François. Répondre. J'ai répondu au professeur. Tu n'as pas répondu à la question. So working through those translations. To choose, I chose this baseball cap. I didn't choose this shirt. To finish, we finished the magazine. We didn't finish the book. To sell, you sold your bike. You didn't sell your motorcycle. To wait for, Jacques waited for Paul. He didn't wait for François. To answer, I answered the teacher. You didn't answer the question. The past participle of regular IR and RE verbs is formed as follows. So when we have IR verbs, we take off the IR and we add the I. So choisir becomes choisi. Finir becomes fini. For regular RE verbs, we take off the RE, we add the U. So vendre becomes vendu. Attendre becomes attendu. So let's take a look at exercice 3, besoin d'argent. Parce qu'elles ont besoin d'argent, les personnes suivantes ont vendu certains objets. Dis ce que chaque personne a vendu. So money needs. Because they need money, the following people sold certain objects. Say what each person sold. So one thing here is we're always going to be using the verb vendre. But remember in the passé composé, it's going to require either a, avon, ave, or ont, one of those verb forms based on the subject, plus the past participle, which is vendu. So our example, we have Philippe and sa guitare. Okay, and so it becomes Philippe a vendu sa guitare. A, because Philippe is like saying he or she, so it's this form. Okay, and vendu will stay the same every time. So again, I'd like you to say these. I will give you a chance to say the sentence, and then you will hear me say it for confirmation. Numéro 1. Monsieur Roche and sa voiture. Monsieur Roche a vendu sa voiture. 2. Mes copains leur chien hi-fi. Mes copains ont vendu leur chien hi-fi. 3. Moi, mon appareil photo. J'ai vendu mon appareil photo. 4. Toi, ton skate. Tu as vendu ton skate. 5. Les voisins, le piano. Les voisins ont vendu leur piano. 6. Nous, nos livres. Nous avons vendu nos livres. 7. Vous, votre ordinateur. Vous avez vendu votre ordinateur. 8. François et Vincent, leur CD. François et Vincent ont vendu leur CD. Let's take a look at exercice 4. Bravo. Les personnes suivantes méritent des félicitations. Expliquez pourquoi. So, bravo. The following people deserve congratulations. Explain why. So, again, notice here, right? Our subject becomes our subject, what they give us here. And this is going to be our passé composé. Okay. Remember again, we have to add our forms of avoir. So, j'ai, Tu as. Il, elle, on, a. Nous avons. Vous avez. Il, elle, ont. Okay? So, again, these forms of avoir are what's going to be right here. So again, what I'd like you to do is say these and then listen for the confirmation. Numéro 1, we have Monsieur Bedon and maigrir. Monsieur Bedon a maigri. 2, Mademoiselle Legros and perdre 10 kilos. Mademoiselle Legros a perdu 10 kilos. 3, Florence gagne le match de tennis. Florence a gagné le match de tennis. 4, les élèves en finir la leçon. Les élèves ont fini la leçon. 5, moi en ranger ma chambre. J'ai rangé ma chambre. 6, nous choisir une classe difficile. Nous avons choisi une classe difficile. 7, toi, finir les exercices. Tu as fini les exercices. 8, Marc, rendre visite à un copain à l'hôpital. Marc a rendu visite à un copain à l'hôpital. 9, vous attendre vos copains. Vous avez attendu vos copains. 10, les élèves répondre en français. Les élèves ont répondu en français. Take a look at exercice 6, aujourd'hui et hier. Dis ce que les personnes suivantes font aujourd'hui et ce qu'elles ont fait hier. Today and yesterday. Say what the following people are doing today and what they did yesterday. So, kind of two sentences here contrasting in our first sentence. This is the present tense. Oops, I'll choose a different color. Okay, our first sentence, this is the present tense. Okay, and in our second sentence, it's the same verb in the past tense. The passé composé. So, numéro 1. Je téléphone à mon cousin. J'ai téléphoné à mes copains. 2. Tu finis ce livre. Tu as fini ce magazine. 3. Nous mangeons des sandwichs. Nous avons mangé une pizza. 4. Mélanie choisit une jupe. Elle a choisi un chemisier. 5. Les élèves réussissent à l'examen de français. Les élèves ont réussi à l'examen d'anglais. 6. Philippe vend sa chaîne hi-fi. Il a vendu ses vieilles cassettes. 7. Philippe et Jean-Pierre rendent visite à leur cousin. Ils ont rendu visite à leur grand-mère. 8. Les touristes attendent le train. Ils ont attendu le car. Say, le passé composé des verbes être, avoir, faire, mettre, et voir. The verbs être, avoir, faire, mettre, and voir have irregular past participles. S'il vous plaît, répétez être, été. Nous avons été à Paris. Avoir, ou. Monsieur Lambert a eu un accident. Faire, fait. Qu'est-ce que tu as fait hier? Mettre, mis. Nous avons mis des jeans. Voir, vu. J'ai vu un bon film. Working through that translation, right? We have to be. We were in Paris. To have. Mr. Lambert had an accident. To do or to make. What did you do yesterday? To put on, to turn on. We put on some jeans. To see. I saw a good movie. In the passé composé, the verb être has two meanings. Madame Lebrun a été malade. Mrs. Lebrun has been sick. Elle a été à l'hôpital. She was in the hospital. So in general, if a verb is irregular, it's going to have an irregular past participle. So taking a look at exercice 10, vive les vacances. Dis où les personnes suivantes ont été pendant les vacances. Dis aussi si oui ou non. Elles ont fait les choses entre parenthèses. Soyez logique. Live for vacation. Say where the following people were during vacation. Also say yes or no if they did the things in parentheses. Be logical. So we have Christophe à la piscine, étudier, and nager. So we know Christopher is at the pool, and would he study or would he swim? So notice we're doing a total of 3 sentences here. Our first sentence is always going to use the past participle été, okay? And remember our form of avoir. Form of avoir, and then the past participle of our second verb, and then our form of avoir again, and our past participle of our third verb. Now, in this case, right, if we're at the pool, we're not going to study. So in each of these, one will be affirmative and one will be negative, right? Not necessarily always the first one or the second one. So we have Christophe a été à la piscine. Il n'a pas étudié. Il a nagé. So again, what I'd like you to do is, and you probably will have to pause it and give just yourself a little bit more time, for each of these to say the 3 sentences and then listen to see for confirmation. So numéro 1, we have Elodie à la montagne, nager, and faire du VTT. Elodie a été à la montagne. Elle n'a pas nagé. Elle a fait du VTT. 2. Nous, à la campagne, visiter des monuments, faire du camping. Nous avons été à la campagne. Nous n'avons pas visité de monuments. Nous avons fait du camping. 3. Vous, à Paris, parlez italien, voir la Tour Eiffel. Vous avez été à Paris. Vous n'avez pas parlé italien. Vous avez vu la Tour Eiffel. 4. Moi, à la mer, faire de la planche à voile, travailler. J'ai été à la mer. J'ai fait de la planche à voile. Je n'ai pas travaillé. 5. Mes parents en Égypte, voir les pyramides, visiter Paris. Mes parents ont été en Égypte. Ils ont vu les pyramides. Ils n'ont pas visité Paris. 6. Vous, dans un club de sport, faire de la gymnastique, grossir. Vous avez été dans un club de sport. Vous avez fait de la gymnastique. Vous n'avez pas grossi. 7. Christine à la plage. Mettre des lunettes de soleil. Jouer au tennis. Christine a été à la plage. Elle a mis des lunettes de soleil. Elle n'a pas joué au tennis. All right, so we see this vocabulary box, and this vocabulary box is to help you because now that you have really 3 forms of verbs, right? You can talk about the past tense using the passé composé. You can talk in the present tense with your regular conjugations. And you can talk in the future tense where you're going to use a conjugated form of aller plus a second verb in the infinitive. And both the future tense and the past tense require 2 verbs, right? Because the passé composé is a conjugated form of avoir plus your past participle. So now that you have 3 different tenses, you have to have a way to know which tense to use in a sentence. And so these are cue words, words that are going to give you a clue. This first column, if you see these words, these are indications that the sentence should be in the present tense. If you see this second column of words, this is your clue that your sentence should be in the past tense using the passé composé. And this third column, okay, is your clue that your sentence should be in the future tense. So these are pretty useful words. These might be words that you would want to write in your notes, okay? And they relate to different times, right? So this top one, le jour, is the day. Le matin is the morning. L'après-midi is the afternoon. Le soir is the evening, okay? Le jour, the day. Le weekend, the weekend. La semaine, the week. And le mois, the month. So maintenant means now. Avant means before, so that's your past tense. And après means after, so that's your future tense. So, s'il vous plaît, répétez. Maintenant, aujourd'hui, ce matin, cet après-midi, ce soir, samedi, ce week-end, cette semaine, ce mois-ci. Avant, hier, hier matin, hier après-midi, hier soir, samedi dernier, le week-end dernier, la semaine dernière, le mois dernier. Notice the difference in the spelling here, and this is because la semaine is feminine, and that's the feminine form of last. S'il vous plaît, répétez après, demain, demain matin, demain après-midi, demain soir, samedi prochain, le week-end prochain, la semaine prochaine, le mois prochain. And again, the difference in the spelling of prochain here has to do with the masculine form and the feminine form. All right, the prononciation. Les lettres GN. The letters GN represent a sound similar to an NY in canyon. First, practice with words you know. S'il vous plaît, répétez. Espagnol, gagner, mignon, la montagne, la campagne. Now try saying some new words. Make them sound French. S'il vous plaît, répétez. Champagne, Espagne, Ancine, la vigne, la ligne, enseignant, la dignité, ignorer, magnétique, magnifique, Agné. Agné mignon, a gagné, son match. C'est magnifique. All right, your homework. Exercise 4. We did this one out loud. I want you to write these sentences. Remember, this is all going to be in the passé composé. Okay, so you're going to take this word and make it your past participle. And before it, you're going to insert the conjugated form of avoir. So, for example, number 1 would be il a maigri, right? Because IR verbs lose their IR and get an I. Okay. Number 2 would be elle a perdu, because RE verbs lose their RE and get a U, 10 kilo. So you're writing out those 10 sentences using the passé composé. Exercise 10. Again, we did this one out loud. Here you're going to write out those 3 sentences. Again, remember, you're going to use a form of avoir and then été in your first sentence every time. In your second sentence, again, you'll still have your forms of avoir, and it'll be the same form of avoir all the time, and your past participles. One sentence is affirmative and one is negative, and you have to decide based on what makes sense. So number 1 would be elle a été à la montagne. And if she's in the mountains, she probably didn't swim, but she probably did go mountain biking. So elle n'a pas nagé. Again, past participle. Elle a fait du VTT. So again, 3 sentences you write for each of these, and there's 7 of them to do. Au revoir, à demain.